Hi everyone, my name is Bumi Akinremi and I'm a Gold Microsoft Let's Learn Ambassador and the community lead for Microsoft Let's Learn Ambassadors OU. I am excited to have with me in the studio today Josh. Josh, you're also welcome. Josh is a Microsoft employee cloud advocate for data at Microsoft, and it's great having you today to speak to us on how to use GitHub Codespaces. I'm sure a couple of us have probably heard of GitHub Codespaces somehow, somewhere, but here today, Josh is going to show us how you can use it in your project. Right. Okay. Josh, are you ready?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Great. Great. I can't see your screen.
Stop sharing. Let me share again. Let me share my screen again. You can see it now.
Okay, great. Floor is
Okay.
yours.
Thank you. So my name is Josh. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft for the data engineering and analytics team, and I'm excited to be here with you today to talk about GitHub Codespaces and how you can be able to use them. So, as part of this session, we're going to cover what are GitHub Codespaces, how you set up your first code space, and collaboration within GitHub Codespaces. If time allows, we'll look at some advanced features and best practices for GitHub Codespaces, and we'll wrap up with a Q&A. So at any one point, you can ask your questions on chat and I'll answer them as we progress. You don't have to wait all the way until the end unless some questions that need me to come in at the end. But you can just ask your questions as we progress and I'll keep an eye on chat and I'll answer them as we go on. So let's get started. What are GitHub Codespaces? I know most of us have found ourselves, if not all of us, have found ourselves in a situation where you have some piece of code or some piece of software. It works on your device, but it doesn't work on on your counterpart's device or on your colleague's device, someone you're collaborating with. And so you end up with this situation where it works on my device. Why doesn't it work on your device? So by the end of this session, we'll see why good GitHub Codespaces is useful and how it allows you as a developer to work and easily collaborate on your projects in a browser-based environment that is fully integrated with, with GitHub. So when you think about development nowadays, so local development is the industry status quo. So that's how everyone builds code. We always build locally on our devices and then we push code to GitHub for collaborating. And then we use different tools for collaboration, like Microsoft Teams, GitHub, email, whatever you use for your organization. But the approach is, locally first. We first build our code locally, and then we push for collaboration with others. So when you're working alone, in many cases, you won't run into a lot of issues. But when you start collaborating with other people, depending on the environment you're running on, depending on the even sometimes the operating system you're using, and even depending on the specs of your particular device, these different things might prove to be challenging. These things might prove to be challenging when you get into a collaboration environment. So when you need to stay productive without having to request for better hardware or without having to spend the entire day troubleshooting, or even swapping different versions of the different tools you're using, GitHub Codespaces comes in to solve those particular problems. So, like, what would your team do if if instead of spending a lot of time troubleshooting local development environments or initial project setup, you have more time to yourself to focus on actual product development instead of focusing on troubleshooting the development environments or just an initial project setup. So GitHub Codespaces should help you deal with those kinds of pains. So what are GitHub Codespaces? As I mentioned in the previous slide, uh, the GitHub Codespace is your instant development environment. So what Codespaces will allow you to, they will allow you to build, test, and debug, and even deploy with a complete development environment in your browser. So you don't need a particular device with particular specifications physically with you for you to do that. From the comfort of your browser, you can be able to test, debug, and even deploy your code. So it allows you to code without compromise. The other thing, it allows you to contribute to repos quickly. Sometimes when you want to contribute to a particular repository, you have to go through the hassle of maybe fork it to your own repo, clone it into your device, and set up the environment before you get started. But with code spaces, it allows you to do that very quickly by reducing the time required to set up your development environments. And this can reduce the time from hours per week to just a couple of minutes, because within just a click of a button you're able to create your code space, and you can be able to start looking through the code, contributing to the repos very, very easily. The other thing is it allows you to extend and customize. So it allows you to configure your editor with dot files and VS Code extensions to create a consistent environment in every code space. So if you're already using Visual Studio Code on your local development environment or on your local device, and you've already configured it in a particular way with particular extensions, you're going to be able to synchronize these on code spaces, and you can be able to have a similar environment with the same feel as your local environment on the browser as well. And the last thing is code spaces are powered by a web-based version of Visual Studio Code, or use with your desktop IDE. So if you've already been using VS Code, switching to code spaces, or it's not even switching, it's using code spaces becomes very easy because you are well versed with your developer, sorry, with the VS Code IDE. Some other key things to highlight as well as to why code spaces prove to become a good choice in your development process. One, they're fast to create and they're disposable. So like you don't have to worry about managing them and all of that. So you can create one and they'll get disposed after a certain time, after a certain period of time. Yeah, the other thing, you don't have to manage the infrastructure behind or even the actual setup of the code spaces. So they are all managed, and so they reduce the overall maintenance for you. So it's just a click and you access the code spaces, and they have a predictable pricing, and you only pay for what you use. And auto with auto suspend to eliminate runaway cost. And the last key important thing is moving your development workload to the cloud will free the limited resources on your personal device. So if you don't have that way powerful device, you can be able to offload your workloads to the cloud for a seamless development process. So I think I've highlighted what code spaces do and why they are important in your development environment. And the next thing we're going to do is see some of the developer tools that come with your default code space environment. So I've mentioned you don't have to worry about the initial configuration, or rather you don't have to worry about the initial setup of your project. That's because with the default code space environment, it comes with all of this. It comes with Node.js, install PHP, Java, .NET Core for .NET developers, also some Azure CLI, Python, and PowerShell. So you get some things to get started, but the most important thing is you can be able to extend this with different with the different tools that you use for development, and we're going to see that as we progress. So I don't know whether up to that point whether we have any questions. You can pause right there to take questions, because the next thing I want us to have a look at is how to actually set up a code space. Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure there are questions now.
All right. So we can progress. So one of the key prerequisites for you to set up a code space, you need to have a GitHub account. So I believe you have a GitHub account, and if you do, you should be good to go. So I'm going to share a different part of my screen. So I'm going to stop sharing whatever I'm currently sharing and share something different. So let me bring in these. Okay. And I'm going to drag in something else. So, right. So I want to do a demo on code spaces and you creating your first code space. So to begin with, I'm going to create a project locally, and then we're going to push the project on GitHub, and then we're going to access the project using GitHub Codespaces and see the development process as well on GitHub Codespaces. So I'm going to create a new folder. Let me call this demo. I'm going to open the folder and open VS Code right inside the folder. Okay. So then the next thing I'm going to do is create a project. So I'm going to create an Azure function project using C Sharp. Then we're going to test it locally. If it works locally, we push it to GitHub and we're good to go. So let's create a new Azure function. And actually extend this a little bit. Yeah, so I'm going to select the folder I just created using C Sharp. Need to select .NET runtime. So I'm going to use .NET 7. Need to select a template. I'm going to use a HTTP trigger and I'm going to call this Codespaces. I'm going to leave the namespace as it is. So this goes ahead and creates our code space. Sorry, our .NET function, and you can be able to see it has everything that we need. So I can just pull the terminal, open up the terminal from here. And some few things I'm going to do is initialize Git. Sorry, Git init. So that initializes our Git. And Git pulls in everything we need for that. So seems like our project is set up. I'm not going to do much changes. This is a simple HTTP trigger function. So basically, you can make a get or a post request and it should return this. So we can test and see it works locally. I'm just going to run. So that's it's going to build. So let's give it some few minutes to build the project. Okay, so seems like it's running. We can copy this URL and test it from the browser. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that in there. You can be able to see it works. So it prints out welcome to Azure function, and you can see that's good enough for a start. So we've already created a local project and it works. So the next thing I'm just going to do is go to GitHub, create a new repository, and push the changes. So github.com. So open GitHub. Have to sign in. Oh, sorry. We need to we need to use two-factor authentication. Just a minute. We need to authorize that. Okay, I'm going to request these again. Seems that's bad. So just a minute. Okay, so that should be approved. Okay, timeout. Let's try again. Okay. Okay, hopefully this should work. Okay, good. So we're going to create a new repository. I'm going to create a new repository. New, and I'm going to select myself as the owner, and I'm going to call this repository Codespaces demo. And the public one is going to leave everything as it is. Nothing much. Create repo. Okay, and then I'm just going to copy this command and push an existing repo from, yeah, and then come down here and go to stop debugging and stop debugging and stop the session. Okay, so we're going to push this to GitHub. Sorry about that, it already exists. Alright, just a minute to save on time. Oh, we need to set up the main, we need to set up the origin. So I'm just going to copy this code because we're just going to copy that. Okay, I can still see my screen. Okay, so I'm going to push. And I think I lost your, you can hear me? I think I lost you for a minute there. I lost connectivity for a minute there.
Yes, yes, I can.
Hello, you can hear me? So,
I think you stopped sharing your screen.
okay, let me try again. Okay, sharing my screen again. Let me know whether you can see it. my screen now?
Nope.
Okay, let me try again. Enter screen. You can see now.
Yes.
Okay, so the podcast. So as I was saying, we I don't know where I lost you, but what we just do is we commit all the changes we've made and we then push. So I can just do a bit push. So it seems like it has pushed. Let's confirm. Good. So the project we've just created, we made the changes and pushed that to GitHub. So what now remains is just need to show you the capabilities of code spaces. So if I click right here inside the repo I've just created under code, you can be able to see the normal option you normally have to clone a repository. But right here next to it, you have another option for code spaces. And right here, I can select, I can create a code space. As you can see, this repository doesn't have a code space. And I have the option to create a code space on the main branch. So suppose I had a different branch. Let's say maybe I created a new branch, call it feature, uh, base it off the main branch. If I came back right here, I can be able to create a code space. Sorry, and switch maybe to the feature branch. You can be able to create your code space on whichever branch you want to. So I have already created the first one, which is on the main branch, but you can be able to create another code space maybe on the feature branch. So if you have several branches, you can be able to have different code spaces on different branches. So you can see we have two code spaces here, one on the main branch and one on the feature branch. So I'm going to stick with the code space on the main branch, and you can be able to see here it is. It opens Visual Studio IDE on the web, and if you remember, it has the same look and feel as my local VS Code, and that's because remember one of the things we said was the capability for you to extend and customize and configure your editor with the same settings you use locally. So you can be able to see it logs in using my GitHub credentials. Sorry about that. I'm having some little bit trouble with network. So it uses my same credentials and applies the same theme I have on VS Code, and it synchronizes my settings as well. All right, so you see, I'm not logged in, but if I was to log in, it should be able to apply the changes. So let's hope the internet doesn't fail me as it has. So, okay, yeah, good. So you can be able to see right now, and thankfully it logged out so I can be able to show this to you. If you can be able to see, this is my local environment and this is the code space, but I'm going to go ahead and sign in as well. And after signing in, it should go ahead and apply my the different customizations that I have. So good. So it has already signed in, and I'm then just going to turn on settings sync and pull down the changes. Good. Then as that is doing, the other thing you realize, and I'm not sure whether I had mentioned this, once we've created the code space on the project that we've on this new project, it realizes there are some extensions that we might need. For example, we need the C# extension, the Azure Function extension, and so it's going to pull those. It's going to put to install that because we actually need that to happen locally. So we've installed that, and then I'm just going to install and reload. So it goes ahead and installs whatever we need, and just like that, you can be able to see it has set up code spaces with the same look and feel as my local development environment. So give it a few minutes for it to load up. Let's see. So let's turn on signing. Not sure why it's not following the changes. Okay, good. So now we have the code space, and the first thing I would like to show you is, we've just created a code space, nothing much. So we can try doing a .NET restore from the terminal and just see whether we are able to build the project. So I'm just going to do a .NET restore. Like my connectivity is not the best today. .NET restore. I'm going to run it. Alright, so you can be able to see, as I have mentioned, there's nothing we've not even installed anything new directly. It has just, as I mentioned, there are some few things that come built right in, some tools, some developer tools that you get with your default Codespace environment. And if you remember from the list, .NET was one of them. And you can be able to see we've done a .NET restore, and it just works seamlessly. Now, we're going to skip all of this, but what you can see is it's still synchronizing my settings, and it has pulled in all the different extensions that I have installed on my local VS Code, and you can be able to see all of these different extensions that I use in my development experience. They come in once I sign in and sync the different extensions. So that's one of the things that I had mentioned about. Now, just to recap what we've done so far, we've opened our project on Codespaces, and now the next thing we need to do is attempt to run the project. So I'm going to attempt to run it, and you can see it says you must have the Azure Functions core tools installed to debug your local functions. So this is the next thing I wanted to mention, is that once you create your code space, it doesn't come with all the tools you require for your development environment. But since it's the same development environment that especially if you've been using VS Code, you can be able to install the different tools that you need for your experience. And so in this case, we need the Azure Functions core tools installed so that we can run our local functions. Just going to click install. I'm not going to supply that, but we're going to allow it to install the core tools. It will take a few minutes. As we wait for this to install, I'm going to go back and check whether we have any questions on chat. None yet. Okay, so it installed and restarted Codespace. Installed and restarted, and so we can be able to see the Codespace here, and now we can attempt to debug. I'm going to attempt to debug again. and see whether we have luck this time. Okay, so just a few minutes. So if anyone has a question as we're waiting for these to debug, you can just ask. Any question? No questions. So giving it time. So the build has started. Sorry about that. Cancelled. Okay, so let's try debugging again. See what happened. Okay, so if anyone has a question as we wait for the project to build. So as you can see, it's still performing some few installations for the different extensions that I have. So let's wait and see. Let me see why it's failing, and I want to confirm whether we need to confirm whether it's running the same .NET version as our. So we need to confirm whether it's running new terminal. Is it running the same? Let's see what .NET version it's running. .NET. So it's running .NET version 6. So let's do a .NET build and see. Build. Build succeeded. So it seems like we have some errors. Okay, so first going to come here and show you some few things. We come back here to the HTTP trigger that we created just before we try and resolve that. The other aspect I had mentioned was collaboration. So with Codespaces, as you can see how fast it was for me to get started with by just opening Codespaces in any repo. The next thing we had mentioned is the ease of collaboration. So with the ease of collaboration, I can just maybe make some changes right here, and maybe just a simple change. And the most important thing is you have the terminal right here, and with Git built in, and you can be able to make changes right in, and also commit your changes and can be able to push your changes to GitHub directly from your code space. So, and if I come back right here to GitHub, you can be able to see the tight integration. If I switch to the main branch, the tight integration that we have between GitHub and the code spaces, and you can be able to see the changes, the commit that we've made just directly from code spaces. And you can further continue collaborating by maybe creating a new function from within. I'm not sure whether the core tools were installed, so I'm just going to try and install them. See whether sorry, let's see whether the functions. So let's try installing Azure Functions. Seems like they're installed. So let's see whether it will allow us to create a new function. Alright, seems like we're running on an error right there. And in the interest of time, seems like just right over time. Just a recap of what we've covered on this session so far is that with GitHub Codespaces, you have the capability to create your repo, make changes, and push them to GitHub. And with just a simple click, you can be able to create a code space, which is your cloud environment, which is your cloud development environment. And with just little, zero, almost no setup at all, you can be able to run your project on the cloud. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back in case anyone has a question.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Josh, for the session. It was really insightful, and I'm sure that everyone that joined probably got something interesting from it, right? I think the fact that you can actually add your VS Code extensions without having to like reinstall it all over again is super cool. And also the fact that you can even collaborate with your code spaces is just awesome. So thank you so much for the walkthrough. I've been checking the chat. I'm not seeing any questions now. But just in case people have questions from the community, I'll be sure to forward them to you. Right. And you can always reach out to Josh on LinkedIn. Right. So thank you so much, Josh. We appreciate you. And have a wonderful day. Bye.